Welcome, everybody, to the HuMEL Emerging Technologies in Humanitarian Settings series. We are joining us with our first session that's with DataKind, where we're going to delve into the Humanitarian Data Insights Project, a partnership between Save the Children, DataKind, and Microsoft. And we're really excited to have Mitali Iyengar, sorry. And also Lauren Woodman, who's the CEO of DataKind. And also joining us is Rachel Wells, a Senior Manager of Community Engagement. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand over because I know there's a lot to get through and we want to have some discussion as well. So I just ask, I will call on Lauren. I think Lauren's going to share a little bit about DataKind.
Great. Thank you, Linda. And thank you for having us here today. We're really thrilled to be able to participate in this session. And, you know, we've been very grateful for the partnership and working with Save the Children and the other humanitarian organizations that have helped us shape some of this early work. This work around looking at emerging technologies and how that might apply in the humanitarian space is a really exciting one. We all know that, you know, humanitarian organizations need an enormous amount of information, usually in a very short period of time, in order to shape and influence their work and to think about the impact that those organizations are having on the communities in which they're working and that they are serving. And we think that artificial intelligence and data science and a number of the tools that we are using in our work have some real promise. And I'm excited that today we're able to give you a little peek as to some of the work that Holly has been leading over the last year and bringing all of this together. It's really been shaped by the input that we've gotten from the humanitarian organizations that we work with. And for those that aren't familiar with DataKind, this is exactly the kind of work that we do. We work alongside social impact organizations in order to identify places where data science and AI and can help with decision support, can help with efficiency, can help with measuring impact, a whole range of things. But we really do that in partnership because we feel like it's critically important that you know, our interest in the data science side and the technology side gets coupled with the real life experience of those that are working in the space and working on the ground with communities around the world. I don't want to take up too much time because really what we want to see is the work that we've been doing. But I just wanted to take a moment at the beginning to say thank you. Thank you to everyone who's joining. Thanks for letting us be here today. And we look forward to your feedback. Tali, I will turn it over to you to take us through all the work that we've been doing.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lauren. And thanks, Linda. Thanks, Alison. And thanks to everyone who's here. Just echoing Lauren again, we're really excited to show some of this work that's been done in collaboration with several humanitarian organizations. We'll go over, this is just a quick overview of what I'll talk about today. Obviously, you've heard a little bit about DataKind. We'll talk about the project itself. I'll give you a very quick overview of it. I really would like to spend a couple of minutes to tell you a little bit about how we came to building the solution in the first place, where our user research led us, and how our solutions research also led us to then building the tools that we're advancing under the Humanitarian Data Insights Project. And finally, I'll focus on the main or the first solution that we're advancing here called the Humanitarian AI Assistant. And I have a short demo for you in there as well that I'll go through. So thanks. And the next slide, please. I know we covered overall why we exist, but just as you'll see as we go through the whole presentation, we really strive to ensure all of our solutions, whether it's in this space, but we have a number of other portfolios that we work in, a number of other domains where we build solutions. Ultimately, what we aim to do is ensure that the solutions are, you know, accessible, basically open source where possible. We really try to ensure that they are flexible, that allow for organizations, individuals to use the tools best to solve their pain points, their needs, and also to be reusable. I think we're trying not to get boxed into producing very bespoke solutions. It's part of DataKind's evolution over the last 10, 12 years as well. So in our mission statement, if you like, we've enshrined the fact that, we want to create solutions that work for multiple entities and that can really extend across a space and contribute to sector-wide challenges. I think particularly in the M&E space, when I think about it, it's something that we hope what we present today resonates with you and is something that you can also peer-to-peer discuss. I think that's the key thing for any of our solutions to really succeed, is to create a good community around it to ensure that there is not only good use of the solutions, but also a good support system to continue the use of that. So with that, thanks, Linda, we can dive into the project. So I think we all here probably know that when it comes to humanitarian action and coordination, data isn't everything, but it is a key component for multiple different things, right? It's key to planning a response, for coordinating with different agencies, maybe just post-event or during a response. And I think especially for the mitigation and preparedness phases of disaster risk reduction. So we've learned that, over time, I think what we've heard is just the amount of data that's generated during these times it can be really overwhelming. It can overwhelm an organization's ability to make sense of those large flows of information and really potentially negatively impact decision making. So the problem of combining meaningful data meaningfully and empowering technical teams that are there to support program teams that are on the field doing the work to really understand the data, use that information, conduct analysis more rapidly, and really support their teams. This has been brought up as a pain point consistently for several years. DataKind has been working in this space now for about 4 years. And this has been one of those most consistent pain points. Next, please. So that's basically, to address this solution, to address this issue, DataKind is really building on its rich history of data analytics projects, working with social impact organizations to see how we could bring in that community-centric, transparently designed, and cost-conscious solutions to this space. And that's basically what we want to operationalize for any humanitarian organization under the Humanitarian Data Insights Project, which, as Linda mentioned, and that this is an initiative that was brought together by DataKind, Save the Children, and Microsoft. One thing that has been, I just wanted to touch on though, this is really focused on emerging technologies. This initiative is really looking at generative AI. So, but we do, being who we are, why we exist in the space, we, of course, recognize that we have a track record of working with social impact organizations, humanitarian organizations, and for building solutions in a way that are ethical and transparent. So we had to continue and maintain those principles even throughout, this, let's see what Gen AI can do. Let's be exploratory. Let's go and really be open to what it can do. So I just wanted to touch on the fact that we do have, it is for the reason that we exist. We are a trusted partner for social impact organizations. So we do take a responsible approach, and we do not bring in new techniques if there are already existing, safer, more powerful techniques that are out there. So that's part of the research that we also do when we get started. And just to share, and some of you might be aware and might have actually directly contributed as well to the OCHA report on early, back when Gen AI was new, just a year ago, on some of the guardrails for safe and ethical use of generative AI for this sector. We do, however, have some specific design principles that we go into for this project. Linda, next, please. And that's to do with how we approach solution building under the Humanitarian Data Insights Project. Obviously, community focused. We want this to, we want it to be informed by community priorities, transparent. Any analysis should be available and easily traced back. Safe, of course. There are lots of challenges with LLMs and large language models and generative AI. We are cognizant of that. Of course, we want it to be accessible so that any organization is able to deploy the solutions that we develop. And finally, I think this might be an interesting one. I think we really intentionally went for an LLM-assisted solution as opposed to an LLM first. This is so that if for some reason tomorrow generative AI disappears, there are policies in place, governance issues, that doesn't exist, the solutions we build should continue to add value. And that's something as a, if you like, a design constraint that we added for ourselves in this project. Going forward, then, in again, just to mention the research that actually informed the work. Yeah, next, please. Thank you. In the next slide. As I mentioned, we have a huge community of organizations that actually informed the priorities to focus on. And although we had some idea around the volumes of data and the accessibility of that data, we actually had to just reconfirm or find out what are the top pain points and priorities that as a sector, individuals in different functions face, so that we could kind of prioritize and determine what were the high impact areas where new tools and solutions are most needed. So we undertook quite an in-depth scoping process. We used multiple mechanisms to engage directly with the humanitarian community, and we synthesized the inputs that we received into a taxonomy. This basically shows that there are lots of common issues within a category of a pain point. But what was really helpful here is that it started to create a sort of priority of what the issues were. And frankly, they actually form at the top two categories around being able to combine data in meaningful ways, that being a really high priority pain point. And the other one was enabling more people to actually engage with data, ask questions of data, get analyses, and be informed, rather than having to rely consistently on, data teams who are already overwhelmed with a lot of requests and information, and not just ongoing work, but then ad hoc requests as well. So after that, after we had these priorities, we then had to map them onto potential solutions. So next, please. At this stage, we looked at, what are the potential generative AI solutions out there, and we have a whole landscape. This is just one slide, but we have a whole landscape of the different technologies that are out there, solutions, and we tried to actually create as you can see, a map to figure out which tools, which uses of generative AI would best address the top priority pain points. And essentially what we found was, first of all, metadata. In any data system, the metadata is really key to automating data discovery. So information about the data itself, the quality, some indication about how I can use this data, when was it collected, what does it have inside, all of that metadata, and having that kind of tagged properly is really key. And the second one was, we found that actually large language models are really, really good at generating code. So this gave us a promise of actually they could be really great for conversational data analysis. So this is where we kind of honed in and focused on the solutions that we would initially invest in under the project. So next, please, Linda. And that's where we are right now. So after numerous engagements with the community, we focused on these two solutions. I'm going to dive in really into the Humanitarian AI Assistant here, because that's the first solution that we're really advancing through to product development, which means it's gone through a lot of community testing, community engagement. We do quarterly workshops to ensure that the humanitarian community has a way to not only understand what we're developing, but provide insights and really flag issues, concerns, and think about use cases as well. Following that, the metadata prediction will be the next thing that we will take into sort of the product development pipeline, if you like. So going into the next slide, I'll introduce the Humanitarian AI Assistant. And essentially, it is a large language model powered conversational tool designed to facilitate efficient and accurate data analysis. Next, please. The goal, again, just is to ensure that that fragmented nature of all of that crucial data that's scattered from, this platform and that source and so on, that might be the reality. That might be something we are all trying to resolve. But at the same time, we want to make sure that given the varying data literacy skills and even the confidence people have in their own data skills, we wanted to just kind of we wanted to remove that impediment for so-called non-technical, non-data people to be able to rapidly analyze and access data and analyze data. And so based on that, we designed the solution with both data-oriented and program management staff in mind. We're going to go into a quick demo of it, which just really shows you from an end user perspective what this tool looks like. And then I'll give you a little bit more information about the sort of like back end, what's going on there. So in this situation, we're imagining a local M&E, manager who is in Chad. This is a persona. This is not a real person, a persona. This is Johannes, who is in Chad, and has been asked to create a 3Ws, who's doing what, where, report for a region called Wadi Fira in eastern Chad, which you might know has been pretty inundated with refugees recently from Sudan, but also food security crises. So here he wants to know in general, what data is available. Johannes just asks that. This would actually take someone hours to identify what data sets are available. Seeing that there is information available on food insecurity, Johannes requests a map that shows IPC3, the concentration of IPC3 in Chad in general, and it's created within seconds. He clicks under the link to provide, to see where the source of that data comes from, right? He returns to sort of like he's seen the situation in overall Chad, comes back to a regional focus, and wants to know, okay, which humanitarian organizations are specifically providing food aid in Wadi Fira, in that region. So he gets in there and gets asked the question. The assistant works on it. You'll see that I'll explain why those green check marks are there, by the way, but essentially gets a confident result that, okay, these are the organizations that are working according to the data that's out there, providing food aid. But this, he sees that quite a few. So he says, okay, I wonder what are the gaps in essential services, in other essential services in the region. So good to see it in visual form. He requests a bar chart to show in general the number of organizations across sectors. And as you can see, gets another bar chart. So thanks. I think that's that's just a very quick demo to show, how someone who just needs some quick information about what's going on, who's doing what, where all of that data exists in this use case in the Humanitarian Data Exchange. So this was something that Johannes was pretty quickly able to do and didn't have to necessarily go to someone who is a HDX data expert, like a support team member to get this. Now, I wanted to, you might have seen some of the responses brought in a little green check mark underneath. Given the developing nature of this technology, our focus has, I mentioned earlier, been really to use LLMs in an assisted manner. And rather than relying solely on just using how an LLM model would, come up with an answer based on its training data and so on. So to this end, the core innovation here is the concept of data recipes, where instead of asking a large language model to analyze data directly, let's say in any database like HDX, what we're saying is generate the code to perform the analysis. And that code is validated by a human, and that human is always in the loop. By design, they are, the human in the loop requires the recipe, that analysis recipe, to be reviewed before being published to what we call the data recipes library, where then it's available to use in like the chat interface that you saw Johannes using, or in, let's say you want to put the outputs in like a website, a report, it doesn't matter. So the recipe, right now we ask the question about Chad and what's going on. Someone else would ask in slightly different language about some other region of the world. And the fact that, if you're in the same organization, the way the code requires the analysis to be done, if that's been approved, that can work with, that you can repeat that anywhere with any data set, with any country. And if the way the solution is designed is that at any point in time, if for some reason there is a question about how did this arrive at this answer, how do I go back and check it, you can actually go back and look and review the code and ensure that the way the LLM produced the result is something you can be confident and approve of, right? So these are some key advantages to using the data recipes concept. But one of the other key issues is that apart from being, transparent and deterministic and secure, if you go to the next slide, it's also inexpensive. We've structured the solution to really be a two-stream solution to enable that reliable human-in-the-loop review. But that also helps to reduce the costs associated with like pinging an LLM and the computational costs with that. So what that does is on the high, we have a lot of end users, let's say you ask any questions about the data, you generate insights. When the recipes are approved, it just runs the code. You're not actually having to use the large language models. And so those high volume interactions end up having lower costs. On the other side, the humanitarian data experts get to focus their limited time as well as, valuable resources on quality control by using powerful LLMs to write those reusable recipes. And you can actually, all of that code is generated conversationally as well, but the data experts have the knowledge to read and review the code and make sure that it is, it is approved. So this method, as of now, it really provides a stable delivery of the solution. It reduces the costs and so on. So I just want to note, though, that the technology is always changing and models are becoming cheaper and so on. So that always means that we get to try out new things. If we go to the final slide, just in terms of the system flows, I just want to quickly touch on the fact that this shows the overall, diagram, like how you can bring in multiple data sources into the solution. Right now, for developing the product, we focused on HDX, but you can bring in Relief Web. You can bring in, every single organization raised the ability to ingest and analyze GIS data as one of the most requested features. So we have shapefiles in there. We have, so you can create maps, you can create boundaries, you can add different layers and create and customize the way you want to display your information, especially on a map. Going forward, please, one thing is, I mentioned, this is to be available to all. So we are including what we call a Docker environment to run all of these different components, which organizations can deploy on their own infrastructure. Right now, with Save the Children, we are working to test and make sure everything works. And what we hope is to have that open source and available for any organization to adopt, deploy, test, use by the end of July. So, but in the meantime, we need lots of feedback to make sure it's really great. So that's why if we go to the next slide, like I say, we're looking for feedback. So we see some immediate use cases, but we'd love to know, what do you think? We think it's really extensible, but what other use cases are out there that, we're missing? Obviously, you are the humanitarians, you are in the monitoring and evaluation space. You might think of like, this is something I do day to day, and this tool would really help me and really transform and give me more time to do the other things because I'm always, underwater on some of these analyses and reports. What other data sets do you use that you think this tool should access? And do you feel, do you already sense some risks and concerns that you might want to share and that you think should be mitigated and addressed? So with that, on my final slide, I'd love to say, we want your input and feedback. We can talk about some of it now, of course, but we also welcome you to please join our community of practice, where, like I said, we meet quarterly and we talk about the tool and the progress that we've made on the development this product, and all of those insights to ensure that we continue to deliver something that is methodologically transparent, it is cost conscious, and it is available for everyone to use. And with that, I thank you very much, and we can open up to questions. Hope I'm on time.
Yes, you're perfectly on time. You're early, in fact. So thank you so much for presenting all of the work that you have been doing, Tali and team. I would like to maybe open the floor if people have some questions. Please feel free to come on video and off mute. We'd love to hear from you.
I have a question about if I could go ahead. My name's Lauren.
Please, yeah.
I'm interested, have you already done some user testing with Save the Children colleagues? Has it been rolled out and deployed, and what was some initial feedback from that, if you have?
Yeah. Rachel, are you here? Rachel Wells? Yeah, my colleague Rachel Wells is here. If you're able to, Rachel Wells, my colleague, and our senior manager of community engagement, ran our user testing session just over a month ago with several organizations actually, and can share a little bit about some findings from that. Rachel, I don't know if you're able to join, but I'm happy to.
Hi, sorry, just on parenting duty today while also working. But yeah, so the community of practice has been really crucial in figuring out what data sets and questions to prioritize, as well as like what our whole user story should be. So what is the experience from end to end of someone who might use the tool, with questions like what are the key reports that it would inform? So for like situation reports, what types of questions are you asking? For your needs assessments, what types of questions are you asking? And bringing all that together into a comprehensive answer. So does that answer the question?
Also, the user testing process, I think we had 20 people participate in actual
Right.
model user testing.
Yeah, so we did one-on-one sessions where they played with the tool while we watched, and they shared feedback on their experience and what would make it better. And what came out of it is a lot of feedback on the importance of attribution, so knowing where the data is coming from so they can link to that source and check the data source and know about the caveats of the data set and understand what are some constraints and what is missing. So that was a really big point of feedback. Another thing that came up is how important it is to understand the language of the humanitarian space. And that was something that the tool was doing pretty well, that people could use jargon that might not be known in other sectors, but is really commonly used in the humanitarian space. And the tool would be able to figure out what you're saying and connect the dots between like food security and IPC levels in the data set and things like that were seen as really, really valuable. It also did a pretty good job with different spellings and people who used English as a second language, being able to understand what they meant, or people who just speak in different tones. Large language models can be very biased towards the way of speaking that the developers have, or that more data on the internet has. And so we're working to try to make it as accessible as possible, but that's something that we're still really conscious of that came up a lot in the user testing as well. And then a few other things were just kind of some minor design user experience things about like making sure the image showed up, making sure we have comprehensive information on the data source, like what we mean by the different data sources when we're giving answers. Little things like that were mitigated as well from the user testing. Anything else?
No, you covered it. Well done. Good memory. And thanks, Rachel. Sorry, I didn't realize you were running. Yeah, we do have and also usability testing report was then generated exactly to help guide and prioritize the features for development in this next phase, which we then keep bringing back to a community of practice to show how we're doing on those.
Thanks. That's really interesting, because I've previously been involved in a project where one of the key outputs of the interviews that we'd done was around people's I guess, mindset towards data. And a lot of people working in country offices, the feedback was, we don't have time to learn how to use X, Y, and Z. We don't have time to do X, Y, and Z. But I guess the outcome of the research I'd done was around how you can use the data to complement what you're doing. And I feel like this tool is very useful to help do that. So
Yeah,
sounds really great.
Something else that came up a lot is that exact thing. Like, I don't have time to learn how to use data. This doesn't require me to learn anything. I just type my question using plain language and it produces a map. The folks from country offices who participated in user testing really shared how huge this could be in speeding up their work and in adding more visuals and data to support their work, which they often don't have time to do, or it takes an insane amount of time to do, because it just like the contextual knowledge and the geospatial coding knowledge that it takes to create a map are not in the same brains within an organization. And so it requires like taking a specific question from someone with contextual knowledge, getting it to the person with the geospatial knowledge. And that can take days and hours to like get the communication and get the map right if you need a map for this particular situation report. And although some of that will still be needed for like customizing things, if something doesn't quite work, but this takes away some of that and speeds it up for sure. So it was really valuable in like preventing the need, being able to use data without having to upscale.
Are there any other questions? I think it's hugely valuable from my perspective, just for the basic fact that it removes barriers for decision makers that may not have the same data literacy as meal staff or people who are comfortable with numbers in large data sets, which we take for granted that people love. But yeah, I think it's amazing that it just kind of makes data more digestible, more approachable, and making people want to do something with it to inform decisions, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and if I may, since we have this audience here, I think one opportunity this presents is, as like Mel folks, that means you will maybe have less of the like brute data analysis producing this bar chart to do. But what it might require more of from you all instead is teaching some of those basic data literacy skills, because we do want to make sure that everyone understands the constraints of data, and we're doing what we can to build that into the tool to make sure we know, like, hey, this data has a lot of missing variables. It might not be very reliable. So like use this information with caution. And because those folks with statistics backgrounds and who do monitoring and evaluation know that we have to look at data quality and be mindful of the data that we're using. But these tools, even like we can put a lot of guardrails into this one, but there's a lot of opportunity now to start to build the capacity to create data visualizations without a lot of data literacy. And so we want to make sure that we're encouraging responsible data practices across the organization so that we can have trustworthy and reliable data sources.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, like, if anyone is able to share like some of the current work, I mean, if possible, that where you're doing some you are doing M&E for a project or a program or something where you are using data and you might see yourself using a tool like this. You don't have to go to that part, just curious. But we'd love to know if there's a chance to ask a question back to the audience, actually.
Or even if there's a situation where you're not using data because it takes too long and you'd like to, so it would enhance your research to be able to pull in, especially like external public supplementary data sources where maybe so far you're only using internal data sources because that's what's accessible. Awesome, Tessa.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Tessa Kadra here from Global Communities, and I will preface by saying I joined late. I had an internal meeting, so I was not able to join all of this, and I look forward to rewatching the recording because it seems this is such a cool initiative. And actually, Rachel, I connected with you at a previous agency on, yeah, so good to see you again.
I recognize your name, but not Global Communities, so great to see you.
Yeah, no, I've been with Global Communities now for a year and a half. Anyways, to answer the question, and I'm part of our global support team, Humanitarian MEL advisor. So to answer the question, I think something that we're working on, and like so many things, this is a work in progress, and we can't yet stand here and say we've got a success to share out, but creating more time to and properly leveraging tools in order to utilize secondary data sources better. You know, we are not the first agency always out there doing a needs assessment. We've got reach for that. We have different UN agencies that are doing that. I think of our work in Gaza where, you know, WFP is doing regular market analyses and actually building in the time and the opportunity to leverage what exists more systematically and with a bit more data rigor, other than just, oh, we read an executive summary of some market analysis and we're quoting it, and that's our needs assessment. I think that's going to take a lot of work from MEL folks or more data literate and comfortable staff to share those skill sets within the broader organization and to, yeah, leverage the type of tech that's going to help us to do that better. So again, nothing concrete, but we're thinking about it really in terms of like how to not constantly reinvent the wheel when it comes to needs assessments and leveraging what's already out there, but really adding more data rigor to that and not just, you know, summarizing other executive summaries and regurgitating them in our own reports.
That's super interesting to hear, Tessa, because one of the things that has come about in our community of practice is, you know, first of all, data sets, and the data sets you mentioned from REACH, from WFP, the food prices, and so on, are used by so many teams in order to, yes, to do needs assessment. And in fact, very specifically in the pain points research that we did, was to, like you said, to really harness the secondary data sources and also reduce the burden of consistently needing to conduct the same assessment over and over again and subjecting communities to that as well. So that's the other thing that we are now actually working. We just were at the Humanitarian Data Forum that was organized by OCHA last week to really show a demo actually on how you can use LLMs with this tool to actually bring those data sources together and do that kind of analysis and start to inform the specifics of needs assessment. So that's also why we think this solution has a I think needs assessments is a really great use case for this tool. And the next couple of workshops that we have planned are really around more deeply understanding what are the current workflows around producing those needs assessments for various people, right? And where might a plug like the Humanitarian AI assistant start to help? So that's super interesting to hear, and thanks for sharing that, and I hope to see you at the next community of practice.
Maybe if I can ask a question. I have loads of questions. I'm actually curious about whether DataKind or maybe other organizations on the call have thought about the organizational culture and the leader kind of behavior change that would need to go hand in hand with using a tool like this to its optimal. Because I think there are human behaviors, human skepticisms around, you know, engaging with data in this way. So I'm just curious if there has been any work or if other organizations have thought about this as well.
So one of the things, at least from our side, we've been working, as I mentioned, very closely with Save the Children on this. And Tamara, I don't know if you would be willing to join us and share a little bit about how at Save the Children, the team is thinking, Save the Children International, the team is thinking about the deployment of something like this.
Can you hear me okay? Great. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's quite a tricky one. And maybe just to be transparent, we're definitely in the middle of trying to think about what the tool could do. And I think the next stage is definitely to think more about how it could be applied. I think some things have already helped with that, like what Rachel said about it being able to use quite simple language, not necessarily needing to invest a huge amount in what we call capacity building, capacity strengthening is quite important, because that has been traditionally some of the big barriers around introducing new tools like this. So I think some things like that are maybe a little bit easier with this tool. I think one concern I have is the aspect of checking the coding, even at global levels. This is something we've discussed, but we don't necessarily have a team that could just easily do that. So there are some concerns about making sure you have the right capacity and team in place to make sure this doesn't become a bottleneck. So that's one thing that we're thinking through. And I think, yeah, an aspect here that we realize we're going to have to do probably around culture is a whole piece around we have a slight fear that AI makes everything look glossy and really great and beautiful, and that we just take that and trust that as it is. And there will be an additional incentive to do this when you're in the middle of a humanitarian response, because you don't have time. And so I think there's an element there. Yes, we might not need to train people on how to use it, but I think there is going to have to be a big element of please don't just take it as it is. And we need to be thinking about how do we build that. Don't think it's necessarily capacity. I think it's just that trigger that we don't just believe it. And what does it mean to go that additional step? So yeah, I think there's so many elements when it comes to culture, but I think those are a few, like making sure we do have the capacity at global levels to not have a bottleneck, because otherwise I think that does kind of jeopardize a lot of the tool. But then an aspect of, yes, this is making the visualization and the packaging of data easier, but how can we build in the critical aspect around what you do with that? And that, to be honest, is something we will have to think quite a lot about, because we don't have it perfect yet. Probably will never have it perfect, but we could have it better. But yeah, I don't know if there's more specific questions. Also, I'm in Linda's team, so I don't know, Linda, if you have a specific question related to culture as well, or it would be great to hear how other organizations are trying to think about how they might be working towards using AI more and what culture needs to be built for that to work well. Because we would love to learn about that as well. This is new for us.
Thanks, Tamara. I also just want to, one of the, apart from a community of practice that's really deep diving into the use of the tool, and we do have a advisory group of, you know, folks in leadership positions that are very much there to gut check absolutely, you know, exactly how would, where would you even start to deploy something like this? What does it mean for resourcing? What does it mean for from a governance perspective, and particularly, you know, holding and accounting for the fact that we have data that's very sensitive. It is certainly not something that should be used without a thought and critical eye, and within the insights that are produced, even if, you know, let's say everything's well installed and you have data recipes and they are marked with this like green check mark, you know, what are the consequences of that? Does that mean that someone suddenly looking at the result is going to not have that critical thinking? Are we going to lose something as a result of using this technology, right? And using solution like this, skills that have been hard to develop and generate and make part of general data culture in the humanitarian sector as well. So there's obviously that aspect as well. And yet at the same time, there is this need to like actually make data more available, more accessible, and informing a lot of the discussions and priorities. And that's really key. And the efficiency gains are really seem to be quite obvious. So we're really excited and grateful to have the leadership in, you know, at Save the Children, Mercy Corps, CRS, Humanitarian OpenStreetMaps from OCHA, and I know I'm missing a few, from IRC, from Norwegian Refugee Council as well, to really participate in and be that kind of oversight into this. We don't have any specific, you know, when the consortium of Save the Children, DataKind, Microsoft, we have the solution out there, but the roadmap is, and the roadmap really is like a roadmap. It takes, we're not looking for it's done and dusted by this date, so everybody take it. And it is something we're committed to working and developing and ensuring that it lands safely, is deployed responsibly, and learn along the way and continue to build that community to share those learnings with, you know, for everyone. And I think there was a comment in there as well about recipes, open source data recipes, and all of those challenges that might come with the data literacy to you know, to create those in the first place. And that's absolutely very core. Recipes do not need to be written and rewritten and you know, reinvent the wheel 100 times. There's a very clear need for having a sort of a recipes hub, a place where those humanitarian data experts can share not only what recipes can be, you know, shared. Some might be internal to an organization, but a lot of it is using the same public humanitarian data sets. But there's also around how to effectively communicate about how to use the insights. That's one side. And the other side is, what do we learn from the problems within data sets to start to hone in as well on how to improve data quality, how to improve the metadata tagging of data sets, so that there is a people are able to deal with the uncertainty better and more effectively when using data.
Right, I think Lauren's got a question whether if she signed up to the COP, will we receive links directly to access the tool when it's deployed in July?
Yes, so we're going to have, yes, you will, absolutely. So that's, please join that. We'll share, you know, we often put out like little learnings in the form of just a few slides or decks as well that we share out with the community of practice. We often have blogs and particularly technical blogs that might be of interest to especially those who are interested in the actual, how did we get to this solution design? So we have a series of blogs that kind of chronologically show our thinking behind how we arrived at which LLM and how, and you know, why design it in this way. It's using a format that's known as language as tool makers, as opposed to just, you know, LLMs to do data analysis directly. So we tend to share that kind of more nerdy stuff as well through the communities of practice, to our community of practice. And finally, at the end of July, not only will we be able to share the GitHub link, but what we're hoping to do, and this is where we are actually using the community for support, is to even launch a test sort of on our own infrastructure at DataKind, just a test version, so that no one has to go out and deploy it in their own organization to see how it works. But we try for a limited period of time to host it ourselves and invite, you know, a larger, if you like, a beta testing, you know, like a sort of soft launch to help and to bring in the community to come use it, but with a clear sense of, for us to get feedback on what is the user experience, obviously the security concerns, understanding how it might be deployed in a humanitarian organization, in your organization, but also things like costs. How much does it cost? You know, these are real and important insights to have. What if we were to run this, and when you have like 100 users use it in a period of 2 weeks, what does it cost? So we can hopefully generate that information and insight as well. And that's, we're aiming to do that towards the end of July and into August.
That's great. I think Alberto's got his hand up. Alberto?
Oh,
Hi, thank you, Linda, and hi everyone. My name is Alberto, and I also work for Save the Children. I know Linda, and she actually shared this through another COP that we have in Save the Children, which is the Analytics Center of Excellence. So the first point I wanted to make is obviously an invitation for Tali, and which I think this presentation will be also great for our own Analytics Center of Excellence. We have a lot of HuMEL colleagues, but also other kind of data colleagues that would certainly be interested on this type of project. So we'll definitely link with Linda after this call. My question to you, Tali, is whether in this project you consider the risk of people defaulting to general tools like ChatGPT or Copilot, right? The development of niche LLMs, we have seen them since, as you said, since last year. Many people have tried to build their own LLMs for very specific things. Like I remember Bloomberg, for instance, tried to build an LLM for financial data analysis only, and then it got actually superseded by the new version of ChatGPT, which is much faster and better at financial analysis. So is this something that you consider in the project, and how the end user will keep using this type of tools rather to defaulting to ChatGPT, for instance, also based on access and uses of the tool? But yeah, that's the first question. I have many others, but we can probably chat in another space. But thank you.
thank you so much for your question, Alberto. And I for all of those other questions, I think would love to connect further, and our data scientists and the solutions architect basically will also be able to really maybe get into the finer details of the question that you asked. But to address key points, the first thing I think we really want to acknowledge that this is definitely a quickly evolving space. Whatever you think is new now and is the way to go, 2 weeks later there's something new. And with the recent release of GPT-4o, we have definitely it's a very powerful LLM, and we're using that in that part of the sort of the work stream where it's for the humanitarian data experts. So the use of those powerful LLMs is more on the vertical where the recipes are generated in the first place. These LLMs are really powerful. They write excellent code. And what we have there is the ability to also swap out and check, what if I used an assistant that claims its particular skill is to work with humanitarian data sets, or really good at analyzing market prices, food market prices, right? So we have built in quite a bit of flexibility. We don't necessarily want to inundate the, in doing a presentation, like inundate, look at all the options you have. I think that's just gonna like really confuse. But in order for us to research and develop the solution, we have had to look at what are the different LLMs out there. Can we make sure that it's not tied to just, and right now this is developed in Azure, so we're making sure that it's not tied to any one particular cloud services as well. So having those options are there and available for those to test, yes. But from the end user perspective, we really want to make sure that the insights that are generated, first of all, from a cost perspective, that you're not constantly pinging and bringing in like LLMs. And if you do use some in, let's say ChatGPT, the result, you don't get the like data recipes approved result. It's you might get it, but it's not the way the whole solution is architected. It's not actually directly linked to the data source. It's just, it's using its trained data to answer the question. In this case, the LLM is not using its trained data. It's directly accessing the HDX database and giving you the result that has been approved through the human in the loop process. So that's where we have put in a few like checks and safeguards to ensure that you can't just bring in, the next LLM or assistant out there to just answer a humanitarian question. I mean, you can, sure, but that's not going to likely be approved within the system in any organization that's looking to deploy the solution. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Tally, Lauren, and Rachel for joining us today and for spending time taking us through what you guys have been working on. On behalf of Save the Children and also CRS, so Alison and myself who lead the HuMEL, we're just hugely appreciative of your time. And I can see that it's generated so much interest just from people on this call. But I know we had so many signups for this discussion today, but I'm guessing because of Eid and other holidays this week. But we will share with everybody the recording and also the materials so that they can also reach out and join the COP. So thank you again. I'm just gonna do a little plug for the next session in our series. So we've invited the DEEP team, so the data entry and exploration platform, on the 16th of July at 2 p.m. Central European Time. And it's an intelligent web-based platform offering a suite of collaborative tools tailored for qualitative and secondary data review. And so we will circulate the link to that sign-up registration, and you can share it with your networks and other colleagues that might be interested. And we'll be posting on LinkedIn and a few other places as well for greater reach. So we're bang on time. Thank you, Tally, so much for keeping us to time and for actually keeping a lot of time for people to ask questions. If you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll put in our email, or I'm sure you can also, I think Rachel shared her email there. It's kindly in the chat. So if you have specific questions around DataKind and their work, you can reach out to them directly. So thank you very much and wish you all a great rest of your week. And yeah, see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.